In this video, we are going to focus on grouped data, frequency tables, and histograms. For some data, especially large sets, it makes sense to group the data and then record it as a frequency table, and then display it as a histogram. Let's take a look on the left-hand side here at this frequency table. It says Fred's results. Let's put some context on this. Let's pretend that this is Fred's spelling test results. Looking at the score on the left-hand side, this is all the possible results Fred could have achieved on the tests. In the middle here in the tally, that is representing how many times Fred achieved that test result. And on the right-hand side here in the frequency, this reflects the tally added up. So reading it from the top, let's pretend that the test results were out of 10. He got 4 out of 10. He achieved that once, so the frequency is 1. 5 out of 10, he achieved that result once, the frequency is 1. 6 out of 10, he achieved it once, the frequency is 1. 7 out of 10, he then got that test score twice, so the frequency is 2. 8 out of 10, he achieved that score 7 times. You can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, shut the gate. That's a block of 5, and then 2 more, so the frequency is 7. 9 out of 10, he achieved that score once, and the frequency is 1. And 10 out of 10, he achieved that twice, and the frequency is 2. If we add all these up, we get a total of 15. That tells me that Fred sat 15 tests, 15 spelling tests. When you are displaying data like this, you have to have a title, which is essential. So at this point, we've got Fred's results. And again, I have put this in a context of spelling results. So again, the score is the possible achievements or possible results he could get. The tally tells you how many times he achieved that particular score. And the frequency is adding up the tally and putting it in numerical digits. Let's now take a look at this histogram on the right-hand side here. This reflects the data from the table. Let's look at the finer points of this. It's the x-axis sits along the bottom here and is labelled according to the score. In this case, it's Fred's test scores. This axis is always labelled based on the topic or objects or items up for consideration, and you'll find it always in the first column of the frequency table under score or interval, and that's coming up shortly. The y-axis here is labelled according to the frequency, or how often the topic or object or items appear or falls into that category. Most of the time, writing the word frequency is enough, just as it is in the case with Fred's test scores. But if we are dealing with measurements, such as kilometres or litres, we must add the bracket with the type of measurement inside them after the word frequency. Let's take a look at how we draw this histogram. We have the x-axis as indicated and the y-axis. We know that the score sits on this axis and the frequency sits on this axis here. They're labelled accordingly. Now you can see that I've got test scores of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. That is reflected over here. So what you see here is written down here. And then the frequency, we look for an appropriate scale. The lowest number is 1 and the highest number is 7. So I've drawn a scale that fits the frequency data here. So your data on your histogram must reflect what's in the table on the left. When we start drawing the bars for this histogram, we never start hard up against the y-axis. We start half a bar off. So if we look at these as centimetres, which they are not, but let's just imagine it, we start half a centimetre off, and then we draw our vertical line to start our first bar. You'll notice that the numbers sit right in the middle of these bars, and I've exaggerated the lines in the middle of this. You will need to draw these when you do your histograms. The biggest stripe is in the middle and the smaller stripes are on the outside. So the smaller stripes indicate the vertical rise of the bar and the larger stripes sit where the numbers are and they go straight up the middle of the bar. So looking closely at this, you can see that for 4 out of 10 it was achieved once, so you only draw the bar up as high as number 1. And test scores 5 and 6 were exactly the same. When it came to Fred achieving 7, he achieved that twice, and that's indicated by the frequency over in the table. He did quite well when it came to test scores 8. He got 7 of those. So we go up as high as 7. 9 was only achieved once, and 10 was achieved exactly the same as 7 twice. So you go as high as your frequency tells you based on your scores across the bottom. Let's take a look at this next topic and set of data. It says the data below shows the number of hamburgers sold each hour by a 24-hour store during a 50-hour period. So I have already taken the data and placed it into the frequency table. And because there was a large amount of data, I've placed it as intervals. So I've put them as intervals of 5. Otherwise, if I was going to create a score, saying from 0 to 24 would have been very large. So when your data set is very large, you need to make sure you use intervals. So intervals of 5 were used because the maximum number is 24, and the intervals of 5, always starting at 0, provide a moderately sized table. Intervals of 10 or higher would not have worked, as the table would have been too small and not accurately displayed the data ready for graphing the histogram. So now we're going to take that data and place it onto the histogram. I've already prepared the base of this histogram, so the X and Y axes. Before we do that, I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of things here. So the y-axis, which is the vertical y-axis, is labelled according to the frequency, which is why we are going to label it frequency. So I'm going to do that now. And that's how often the data or score or object appears. And most of the time, the writing of the word frequency is enough, just as it is in the case with this particular topic, so the hamburgers. So generally speaking, frequency written here is all that you need to do. But if we are dealing with measurements such as kilometres or litres, we must add the brackets and put that measurement on the side there. And down the bottom here, we are dealing with the category that we're looking at. So things like topic, objects, items, those sorts of things are going to be written down here. So we know that this is hamburgers sold, so we can label this one, this x-axis, hamburgers sold. Now we also have to give it a title, and you give it a title based on the topic, and I know it's to do with hamburgers sold. I've already created one here. I'm just going to copy it. Hamburgers sold. You can label it anything you want as long as it reflects the topic that you're being asked to deal with. Now we need to look at the scale situation here. So if we look at the class intervals, those class intervals need to be displayed at the bottom here. And now I'm going to fit in the class intervals down along here. Now remember, the bars that go into this histogram do not touch the y-axis. They will come half a bar off, and this long tab sits in the middle of that bar. So we have a category of 0 to 4, so I'm going to run it sideways, 0 to 4. We have 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, and 20 to 24. A bit messy there. I might just fix that one up. 20 to 24. Alright, so now we have all the class interval numbers down here on the bottom. We now need to look at what our frequency would look like. So we take a look at the green numbers here in the frequency column, and we look at our smallest number of 3 and our largest number of 19. And we have to come up with a scale that's going to work. Well, I know that we have to start with 0 for a start. That always goes there. And I'm thinking if we look at the multiples of 3, we could come up with a good scale here. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 and 21. And that means that our lowest number 3 features down here and our highest number 19 is going to be in here somewhere. So the scale works for us. You don't need to go any higher than 21 or even higher than 19, but I've chosen a scale that's going to work here. Alright, so now we are going to take this data and place it into the histogram by drawing our bars. So we look at the first interval of 0 to 4, and 0 to 4, okay, features 3 times. So I need to go up to 3, so bear with me on this. It's not the easiest thing to do on a whiteboard when you're sitting down. So we have an interval of 0 to 4 that was achieved 3 times. So 3, and there's our interval there. So you can see that I've drawn you can see the long little stripe here is in the middle, and the 2 little ones is where I've got my bars going up. Okay, the next one is 5 to 9. 5 to 9, it features 7 times, so I've got to find where I think 7 is. And I think if you look at this, it's basically, there's 3 numbers that feature between 6 and 9, so I'm just going to go above 6 to get to about 7, so I think that's probably good enough there. I'm going to do the same thing again. You would normally be standing over your page or sitting up over it, and you can see it much clearer than this. I can't stand up and look over because you'll see my head. And now we go to the interval of 10 to 14, which was achieved 15 times. So I'm going to draw this up to 15. I think we're sort of close there. Come all the way down. Wonky, this one. Okay, they need to be the same thickness, and you can do that with your ruler much better than I can. So I think we've hit 15 there. Intervals of 15 to 19 was achieved 19 times, so we need to go up to 19. So 19 will just be above 18. So I think that that's not too bad. We'll go up to there. You probably can see it better than I can. And we're going to come down to that middle bit there. I'm just a bit off that, so I've gone a bit too wide in my bar, but it needs to come down to there. And last but not least, the interval of 20 to 24 goes up to 6, so that's going to be a bit easier for me to see now. We go across to 6, so about there maybe, and down through. I've gone a little bit wonky with my columns. I meant to sort of have that on the middle bit there, so I have gone a bit too wide, unfortunately, but it's a lot easier for you to do it when you have a ruler and you can stand over your page and have a bit closer look. So just to recap here, the frequency scale must be appropriate to the data being graphed. The spread or the gap between numbers must enable the graph to show a distinctive shape amongst the columns, so either symmetry or skewness can be seen when reading the data. So I'm going to draw on this one for you. If we look at this, we go low, we go high, then we come back down to low again. It's got a bit of a bell curve shape to it, so that's symmetrical data. If this one was high, it would be negatively skewed, but this brings it down to make it symmetrical, so it's symmetry.